Hola.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Diego Mas Trelles, co-director of this film festival, of this 5th edition. Welcome, and welcome also for those of you following us on streaming. This is the first of the 2 roundtables we're going to have this afternoon. Every year we try to show the work of our directors, the filmmakers here, which well, they are the ones who are visible, even if women are not so visible sometimes in our society. And we also try to focus on the other activities in the value chain in filmmaking. We've had roundtables with composers, with cinematographers, but this year we wanted to focus on screenwriters, because they are the ones who create the story. They are the ones who can change the narrative, and they can give more importance maybe to female roles in the stories and to female stories or written by women. I'm not going to introduce each of them because Begoña Piña will do that, working in press for CIMA. He will be our moderator this afternoon, and she will introduce the speakers, the panelists. Then we will have another roundtable with filmmakers, with directors participating in the festival, some of them. Good afternoon, can you hear me? Thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce our speakers. We have Alicia Luna, screenwriter and teacher also for screenwriting. That's very interesting for us. I am not going to give you their CV because it will be very long, so I will just give you some brief notes about them. Alicia is a screenwriter of Te doy mis ojos. She won a Goya with this movie and many other things. Then we have Olatz Arroyo. She's basically a screenwriter for TV. She's worked with screenwriting teams in Siete Vidas, Aida, Ahí Abajo. But right now, she's also a creator. She created the Supernormal TV series. We have Paola Randi, screenwriter and director, also filmmaker. She can tell us a lot about what she does. She has a film she created recently with Monica Bellucci. I don't know the title in Italian. Or in Italian, yes. In Italian is, I think the name is something like, I'm sorry because my Spanish is not very good, but
actually, and it was interesting for me because the writers are the very famous Italian recent movie which is Gigolo. I don't know if you heard about this movie, but it was really like very interesting. The writers are very good writers, and it's the first time that an Italian woman directs a Christmas movie, which of course is not the usual Christmas Italian movie, which is kind of so it's interesting. It was interesting.
Y luego tenemos que no.
And then we have someone else. She couldn't be here, but we have Virginia Yagüe. She couldn't come, but she's connected online. She's worked in Amar en Tiempos Revueltos. She's now also the president of DAMA, the Screenwriters Association. She's been the president in CIMA, the Association of Women Filmmakers. And she cannot be with us because she has COVID right now, but she'll be with us online. Any one of you who want to ask a question, you can please raise your hand and you can ask your questions, because I have many, but I'm sure that yours are as interesting as mine. We will start with Paola. She's going to tell us, she will give us a little report about how is the role of the women in the Italian film industry. I'm afraid it's similar to the one in Spain.
For having me. I'm really thrilled to be here, and this place is amazing. But apart from that, I'm also like coordinating a group in an association of scriptwriters and directors, like authors, that is called Cento Autori in Italy, and is a national association, and I'm coordinating the group for equal opportunities down there. So basically what we are doing is we are starting to talk to a lot of people, like institutions first of all, but then also broadcasters. For example, we just had in Rome Film Festival a meeting with Netflix, Rai, and Mediaset, for example, and Sky people, leaders, so to address the problem finally, because actually there is a problem. So because we have in Italy now an institution which is a permanent observatory on, you know, equal opportunity in women. Do I go too fast? No, it's okay. Basically, we have data finally, because we didn't have before. So I brought some with me, if you're interested, and that's it. So the research is on, from 2017 to 2020, on all the projects which were presented for funding to the ministry. Okay, so we're talking about movies, but we are also talking about TV series, because there's a particular funding for TV series that production usually ask for. These, which is quite clear, is the percentage of men and women involved in the industry, as you can see. Actually, sorry, I need to stand up. I don't know why, but I cannot sit. So directors, there we are, 16%. Screenwriters, 21%. Editors is 25%. Musicians, 7%. Director of photography, 9%. Producers, 27%. Costume designer, there we are like leading the game with 75%. Production designers, 34%. Makeup artists up to 70%, and VFX supervisors 8%. So I think it's quite clear. I mean, we don't need to comment this. So let's go on. And these are the numbers, so you can watch them quite clearly on these projects, of course. Not everybody is going for public funds, but like almost everybody is going is asking for public funds. So, and the screenwriters men are 1,628 versus 432 women, and the directors, well, you can see how many. So. This is also very, very interesting, because this is like focused on the length of the film. So under 70 minutes, directors is 21%, scriptwriters 24%. But if you go to long feature film, or series, like more than 70 minutes, it's 14%. The directors is 20% the scriptwriters. I didn't go through the others, but you can see clearly DOPs. Well, actually, because this is a short film, the fact that DOPs are a little bit, could seem encouraging, but the problem is that then they get to reach the market, So then there's no data on the budget of the projects or the gender pay gap. And this is a huge thing to take under consideration, because basically, first of all, we don't know anything about gender pay gap in our country for our sector. Second, the budget of the movie is crucial, because, if you write a wonderful script, but they don't give anybody money to do it, or they give poor money to do it, even the quality of the project is affected. So we suggested the ministry to go and look for these data. Legge Franceschini is the first time. Franceschini was the Ministry of Culture until this last election. And Legge Franceschini is a law which for the first time includes some extra points for projects which include, have the 60%, have a kind of a gender balance set. But the interesting fact is that this is the projects applying for public fund in 2020. You can see it's quite clear. I think I don't even have to. With Legge Franceschini, we increased the number of projects like directed by women of 1%. So I went to France to try and figure out what they did, because their law increased the number of directors of 36%. And I found out that the reason is that they got special funding. Like, you don't have to wait for the whole project to be, approved, but because this is Franceschini law, this is the deal. Like, you have extra points, but if the whole project is going to pass, in France they have a specific law, and so they finance you specifically if you have 60% or more of the entire crew, like meaning directors, script writers, etc., and in a sort of a gender balance. So this is also interesting. Web and TV projects financed by the ministry, access to tax credit for production in 2020. As you can see, for the web is 22% and for TV is 14%. That's why it was really interesting to talk to the broadcasters. We have been asking for data to the broadcasters, and they didn't have it because they never just did it. They never, And so, but it was interesting also the fact that they came and started, a conversation on this thing, because if nobody talks about it and nobody faces it, it's very difficult to do something. Also to understand what to do. And this is it. This was the short version, because I didn't want to take too much time. But so this is the point where we're at. And so it's so important that, because now there's a new research which is going to be released soon, in TV projects of Rai and Mediaset, which are the non-web-based broadcasters in Italy, we saw that we are around 36% of script writers are women, and 17% of directors. We are talking about directors too, because in Italy, I don't know about here, but it's like the female vision of the director, so to speak. Or at least a balanced, vision is helping a lot during the process. So it's like something that we, in my opinion, should go together. In fact, in my association, we put them together, like directors, we put us together. Also because in Italy we have a tradition which is the one which says that the director writes as well. So, for example, I started that way. Probably because you're the only one who believes in you. So you write your own stuff, but then you start to work with script writers. I started 20 years ago. Now it's quite different because the coming Netflix and all this, the American way, so to speak, changed the whole scenario. I think for good also, but it changed it dramatically. So now everything is really different. But nevertheless, I think that now more than ever, we really need to stick together because it's important and we can do a lot of things. I don't know, was I too long? Okay.
Perfecto.
Gracias.
Paola.
Bueno, me temo que...
I am afraid that in Italy you're even worse than here.
Vaya Fred. Aunque en España...
even if, well, in Spain, data are not very encouraging either. I wanted to ask you how you got to screenwriting, but after hearing Paola, I think we're going to talk about the situation of women in the film and in the film industry. Probably Alicia, who is very connected to the Association of Screenwriters. Probably you can tell us what the situation is right now. And I would like them all to tell us a bit about the salary breach and what is the situation of women in that case. Yes, Virginia and Olatz and me, we all belong to ALMA, the Screenwriters Association. Probably Virginia has the data in her head more than myself. Probably she is aware of the specific figures, but in our industry, in the sector, until now, and right now there are many more women working in this, but the salary, the highest salary, is always belongs to male screenwriters. I can provide names of screenwriters, men, and we can think of so many of them until we get to a woman's name getting a high salary, and it's never as high as the salary of male screenwriters. I don't want to give names because they are our colleagues at the end of the day, and they sure don't want me to name them, but if we wonder what successful female screenwriters we have in our country, well, quite a few, and none of them are earning the salary of male screenwriters in the country. And that gap is the same in movies and TV. In TV, I don't know. Probably Olatz knows more about these because she's worked in TV more than myself. But, well, I don't know. Probably yes. I've been in TV for many years. And when I started, when I was just a screenwriter in a team of screenwriters in a comedy series where usually there are not many women and we are not so well known. Usually, well, there was a misconception that women are not so funny when you are in a team of screenwriters, and we had the feeling that men were earning more and they were getting better jobs, and so it was a male world in a way, and we were strangers. We felt like strangers in there, so it's difficult to get to a nice job, and then we were earning less, that was for sure. And you were working in minor projects, and throughout my career I earned more prestige, and now I do feel that I am negotiating my salaries, and well, I don't know what my male colleagues are earning around me, but I do negotiate my salary now. It's different. I'm in a position now when, well, I just negotiated a contract, and well, I pushed a little and they accepted. So right now it's, well, if you don't want me to write it, I won't. The director wanted to do it, so he accepted what I suggested. But how many years did you have to wait to be able to do that? Well, a lot, many years, 15 years writing. You said something very interesting. You said you started writing in a comedy series, and when women were not supposed to be so funny. This misconceptions about women, I'm sure that we see that in other sectors as well. Probably they are not looking for female screenwriters for action films, or probably they choose us for other kinds of films. Or if Virginia, if you can say something too. Yes, hello. I would have loved to be there with you. I know you know that, but well, it was impossible because of COVID. It's funny what you are saying, Begoña. we, on average, in studio, in the researches that have been carried out by CIMA, and they're similar to the one that you showed in Italy, it was interesting to see some data that we keep seeing nowadays about screenwriters. For example, we are around 30% in fiction writing. It's a figure that has increased compared to 20%, which we had before. But there's a figure that never changes, which is in fiction features, women have half the budget that male filmmakers. So trust in women is lower, depending on the kind of projects. And that brings us to a vicious cycle and makes us talk about films by women when, well, actually it doesn't have to be always the same kind of stories, and small stories, more in other topics. No, it's related to the budget that we receive for our films. And in TV, for example, in the last report that we have, they were talking about the employment situation for filmmakers and screenwriters, and we could see that there was a quite big gap for leaders in the teams, in the creative teams for filmmaking. So that was the difference we could see. And it's interesting that we have very experienced women, but they don't lead teams in the film industry when they are young. It takes them longer to get to those positions. So we need to keep working on this, and we need to keep on giving our support. And how is that in Italy, Paola? Does this happen too? Female screenwriters work in all kinds of film genres, or?
It's quite interesting because in Italy, yes, it's like similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. And especially like in writers' rooms, the role of female scriptwriters is frequently the one of like fixing stuff. So you get this writer room, and then you kind of call a woman in order to fix things, you're kind of taking care of something, which is kind of weird. And on the other hand, the funny thing is that somebody said in my country, I quite frequently hear this thing, when there's a woman involved, like a female character, you got to have, you're forced, sort of, no, it's a complaint, you're forced to have a female scriptwriter or a female director, which is absolutely not true. The data tell us that it's not true at all. But on the other hand, if I'm hired to be a director for a movie, I actually been asking almost like the 99% of time they're offering to me projects with a female character as a leader, which is kind of weird because basically we can tell stories about men too. Mm-hmm. It's not compulsory. It's a vision. So the vision can be on both men and women, can't it be?
Of course.
So basically, it's a matter of, okay, you're like kind of allowed to say something about you being a woman, but sometimes, because usually it's always men directing them. But on the other hand, what happens? Because it really, it would be really interesting to see something else also in male representation. I think that everybody would. For male characters, I think that the narrative has to change, has to be at least more various, in order to start to plant a seed of really, something that changes. Because it's a matter of perspective, of vision. So what we do is I think we are kind of interpreter of the reality. It's so strange that you told me that here women are considered not good for comedy.
Well, at least in the TV show I worked in.
I see.
But yeah.
Well, actually, in Italy, it's a matter of budget. For example, there are quite a few women who were able to direct movies over a certain budget, which means that the entire project is kind of not very rich. Okay? As you said very well before, I'm pointing to the screen because you're not here, but so basically, I really do think that something has to change, and it's also really frustrating. The thing that actually she said very well is, imagine this, if it takes 16 years, okay, to get to the same level of somebody which is not a woman and who's working, and maybe he's good as well. We are not talking about, but the thing is, maybe for him takes 4 years, same level. I'm not saying to reach the top, I'm saying same level. Okay, that affects your life dramatically. This is also meaning that if you're not rich or wealthy or coming from a rich background, how can you possibly survive until that moment?
Yeah.
That's a big question, and it's a big problem, and it's just not fair and not right. One of the reasons why I'm dealing with this is also because my mother, it's a kind of inherited thing. My mother was president of a kind of an NGO, big one, dealing with women's rights in economics. And the trust issue is crucial. For example, this is something that has been quite clear in business owners' world. Mujeres empresarias. Okay, for them, the issue is they don't get credit, money from bank. Okay, for a scriptwriter or a director, is kind of the same thing, because we have to present an idea to people and convince people to put some money to invest in your idea. So the funny thing here, in the Mujeres Empresarias world, is that they trust us with children, with raising children, but they don't trust us with dealing with money, what it is all about. Isn't that weird? I think it's strano. Raro?
Sí.
Raro. Sorry for my Spanish.
Surrealista. Esto que estaba, ¿verdad? Es surrealista más que raro.
Es.
It is surreal, yes, more than strange. It's surreal.
Las mujeres.
This thing you were saying, that women are hired for writing about for female roles, and we were talking about that with Alicia before, and I want to ask you something. Do they actually tell you this right straight away? They tell you that they don't count on you for writing stories with male roles? No, the telephone line just doesn't work. I'm 59 already. I started writing when I was very young, and I was never called by a director to ask me to write to be a screenwriter. Well, yes, my husband, the one who is my husband now, but I've never been called to hire me for screenwriting. It's very difficult. Us female screenwriters and filmmakers as well, we deal with many misconceptions. It's difficult for us to be to get that trust, for them to offer us that job. We trust on men, but we don't trust on women so much. So you need to earn that trust. Really work hard to get that trust. Just working a lot and proving that you can do it, and you are also actually dealing with your own prejudice, because sometimes we feel we're not able, and we are, but it takes us years to believe that ourselves and to actually have that confidence in ourselves. So we have to deal with all those misconceptions, but it's a male profession in a way. Roles are male roles basically, and they are created by men, and so at the end it's all the time the same problem, because if the stories are created by men, well, they are quite stories with a male vision. Yes, and we share an anecdote. If you remember, Virginia, we worked together to introduce, to present a project. I'm not going to mention the people. It was a very interesting project for a big production company. We were two queens. Well, they received us there, so they knew about us. We told them the story. It was a comedy. Yes, that person laughed at it, and he said, well, written by two women. The main role is a woman. Yes, it was a woman with two kids. Yes, and he said, well, can this actress play the main role? She was 28. And we said, well, two kids, 28 years old, well, a little difficult, but okay, we accepted it. And then he said, well, it's better if a man directs this, because otherwise it's gonna feel like a feminist movie. And then we had to stop, and when we were in the parking lot afterwards, we started laughing out loud, because it was ridiculous, and it was years ago.
No. Well, no, and this question is not impertinent. Right now it would be a scandal. Many years ago, well, this person is not in the broadcaster anymore. When you have a female protagonist, there's normally a lot of fear. Well, is she going to be liked? Well, a good protagonist has to have flaws, and there's always this fear. And producers, no, she's not going to be liked. This protagonist is not going to be liked, and it doesn't seem that women are allowed to have flaws in this context. I started working in a team that was fully male. There was only one female protagonist, and I don't know why, but they called me to collaborate, and also with the character also had a disability. But I think that as a screenwriter, talking as a screenwriter, if the system is to be really equal, is when they use anti-heroes as protagonists. That's what they do now. So right now, a male who makes mistakes, who is not really ethical between good and evil, but at the same time he's liked, he's friendly. We've never been allowed to do something similar, because we're always sanctioned, considered with a different perspective. And if we're talking about TV prejudices, or a woman who is cheating on the man, that kind of thing, you know? And this has to do with these prejudices, with a system that we haven't reached equality yet. And it is tricked, it is flawed. And the same goes with regard to producers, when they don't trust us, when they don't trust our careers. This is obvious. And we've had to prove a lot more than many of our male colleagues. And this continues to be like that. We have people in the teams, new incorporations with shorter careers, less prestige, that have worked less hard than us. That's clear. Yes, we're talking about, Tony Soprano as a female, right? This would be completely unthinkable. We can't conceive this. Will we reach this situation? Screenwriters, female screenwriters, have to work hard and defend this with this type of characters. I wanted to ask you, considering that Kafkian interview that you had with this guy who didn't want this story to seem too feminist, I suppose many years have gone by. I don't know exactly how many, but there's been a significant increase of female screenwriters in TV and film industry, and taking into account this and the current circumstances of women in industry, how have you perceived this change? I'm referring to, we have some stories in films, on TV, with women as characters that really reflect reality. Well, there's been a change. And with regard to your question before, the risk here is the narratives that we are conveying in cinema and TV. The world that we are, the reflection of the world is always conceived by males, and this is what we are conveying. And because if not, we don't have space in the narrative, and this is dangerous. If we have action movies, policeman movies, it's always a type, and then suddenly you have a woman protagonist, and if she's a chief inspector, and she's angry, always angry, she's got many problems, and that's not a reflection of the current world. We have problems, they have problems, and we can all sit down, have a drink, and laugh about them. And this is why it's dangerous to me, the reflection of this narrative, what our viewers are receiving as message. This is dangerous, because when we decide to devote ourselves to cinema, to be screenwriters, we want to tell stories. Why? To make people laugh, and also to change things a little bit. We have different reasons, but I like, in a way, from my perspective, I don't want to tell a story that is not socially acceptable, and I want to, shake people up a little bit. And I also like making people laugh, and I also like horror stories. I have a great script on a horror movie. And nobody wants to know anything about it, and I've never had a chance with this project. But I think it's dangerous. What we're seeing on screens, it is always males telling us what the world is like. How do men work in police stations and war? How do truck drivers work? In the case of catastrophe, the leaders that have to face that situation, how to deal with that catastrophe so that the planet doesn't end. This is the narrative, and this is what we're all watching. And there are a lot of women who don't see this, and when we try to explain this to them, they feel, this is an aggression. Feminist. Well, you're also a feminist, and if you don't know it, well, you should. Welcome. I think that stories brought forward by screenwriters, females, are widely accepted by the audience. Even if some producers don't have the right perspective, there's essential sexism within the industry. They know it can work, but they don't support you because you're women, and that's it. I think that we should talk about platforms. Let's talk about platforms, yes. Those of us who go to the movies, we might be slightly different. We are a bit strange and different. And those who are at home and watch anything on the platforms, they just they just follow the algorithm. And I'm telling my friends, can you see what's happened just now? Kids that keep disappearing on these series all the time.
I'm so sorry. Are you okay?
Nada.
Is
Yes,
the phone
it's okay. No, it's okay.
Bueno.
Don't worry. Yes.
Madonna. Sorry.
Sigue, Alicia, por favor.
No, it's
Yes, Alicia, keep going. The algorithm. Those who are at home, we don't really know what's happening, and we have to break this algorithm, because I don't want to continue watching series that are all the same. Girls missing, rapists, and people are just watching this, and that's all they're watching. We have to do something about it. We have to break the situation. We have to change it as screenwriters. We have to create stories that are different. It is true that we have this male perspective everywhere. And if you look at commercial movies and the stories that are seen on platforms, they are permissive with regard to violence against women. There's certain things that are common threads to all these projects. And you cannot see a bosom, for instance, and we've got lots of stories with male friends. They work in teams, they save the world. It's always the same. And normally the stories of women are always lonely women, and there's the same story all the time, and it's tiring. In Spain, we also have American series, Finnish, etc.
Sorry. No, because I agree, but like on one hand, it's perfectly true. I don't know how was it here before the networks. Okay, I really don't know. In Italy, we weren't free at all. Like the narrative was imposed. So basically, we had to tell certain kind of stories. Okay, for like the leading, it was like, and it changed also, because I think that the funniest thing about the algorithm is that it changes its mind, the algorithm. So you're doing, for example, this is something that happened, a superhero story, but the algorithm at a certain point of the thing, maybe you shot it already, like you didn't only write it, you also already shot it. So the algorithm says, no, okay, we got to change it, change plans. This is not going to be something on superheroes because it doesn't work. So we're going to transform it into a teen drama. And you go like, but I shot a superhero. What are we going to do? So that's kind of funny and weird. But this happened also in the like regular TV shows, first of all. Second, the other thing which is tricky is the thing that I see like kind of puzzling is the method. Like you don't have authors anymore, so to speak, but you have like a team, an enormous team of employees working for products. They even call them products. So this is the main shocking thing that I see. But on the other hand, on equal opportunity stuff, for example, when they came to Italy, they actually promoted and produced the first series with three female directors. I was one of the three, and so I remember my colleagues, male colleagues, telling me, what? All women? I mean, come on, this is not fair. Basically, it's always all men. Like if it's 4 directors, it's almost always all men. Here in this series, also all the scriptwriters were women. So this is something new. So it's kind of tricky because on one hand is for sure like sort of industrial, you know, so you lose a little bit of our art, of course, because you respond to an industrial kind of thing. So it happens exactly as you said. On the other hand, it kind of, in Italy at least, opened up to something which was unreachable before. In fact, the number of scriptwriters, female scriptwriters, increased dramatically from the moment that they arrived. And I don't think that before there wasn't a sort of code of politically correct, which was only different from this one, but it was a code. I remember that there were a lot of, for example, in Italy, there were a lot of TV series on saints, you know? Of course, the church is in Italy, you know, the Pope, and all this stuff. So, I mean, the narrative has always been driven by the broadcasters, in my opinion. The problem here is the process, which is really industrial, which takes away something that we need, which is not industrial. We don't need to sell, we need to write good stories, which is totally different. I think it's different. It can be something that goes together. You write a good story and it sells, but the story is not good only because it sells, you know, because it makes money. This is really important. And I think that we should definitely, as women, we should definitely like get out of that form of like that mind, that way of thinking. We are telling stories which are important because they are stories. I don't care whether they sell or not. Maybe I'm too I don't know. I'm polite, but like I think that this is the problem. You should like kind of refocus on what's really, or what does really matter, which is not necessarily money, I think. I mean, they are important, but they are not the crucial point, in my opinion. So I think that on this side is the industrial process that scares a lot, I think. But on the other hand, before, in my country, it wasn't that free. And we had bad girls, of course. We have Gomorra. So you got a lot of mafia female character, because we have a big, huge mafia narrative, of course.
Pero aquí también, Paola.
I think here the same. Before the platforms, stories were blocked by producers and screenwriters. We've changed our way of working with the platforms. Before, the producer sold the stories and they decided, they had the direct contact to broadcasters. Now we have platforms reaching out directly to screenwriters, and this has changed. It has improved our situation. But of course, stories cannot be interested only for commercial reasons. But for this reason, from the trade union, ALMA, we have to continue maintaining our status as authors and not only think about Netflix, produced by, created by Netflix. No, we have to maintain our reputation. This is our fight. Before, our fight was with the producer. Now it is a different fight. Platforms allow us to do our own stories, and for instance, my project wouldn't have been possible with the platform system. But we do have different stories, different perspectives, but you also have to be careful because you can get lost as an author. And it's just the series created by the platform, and the rest of us don't really matter, and it can't be that. Before opening the floor to the public, I want to ask one last question. Just give me a second. One last question. taking into account the role of the producer who used to block projects in the past. What about male colleagues, screenwriters? Do they want to work with you towards an equal situation of female screenwriters? Well, I think there's been an evolution. When you are part of a team, male and female, men and women, we try to generate this gender balance. And those that I know, in general, do try to contribute. Some don't, but I think the majority do. Virginia, you've worked in teams, and you have a lot to say. I'm more in the film industry, but less than Olatz and Virginia, who work on TV projects much more. Well, yes, there's been a change. That first scenario that I have experienced years ago within a male-dominant team, I think now teams are more equal, and in even some cases we have more women. Well, I am referring to the work, the collective work, also the trade union. A producer might prefer a story on men, directed by men, but do you think within your collective as screenwriters, do you think males are supporting you, or are they just waiting, sitting on the fence to see what happens? Well, I have wonderful colleagues, and yes, they're very helpful. Well, but you'll always have some who don't contribute, and also some producers, yes, some nice producers. Josefina Molina used to say that you can see how people behave when we're talking about frontiers and also certain jokes with humor, right? Yes, I wanted to contribute with regard to what Paola was saying about Italy. I think, yes, we have platforms, and we've seen an evolution, we've seen an increase in opportunities. Some aspects we thought were going to evolve more, others haven't that much, but I do think that we still have mainstream TVs and public TVs. And they owe society. They cannot be kidnapped by success or money related to a TV series. Their programming has to be based on quality and content, and I think that this is something that has to be taken into account. We're talking about mainstream or public broadcasters, Televisión Española, that have public funds, and we have given them as a society those funds, and they have to owe to that duty. When we're talking about private broadcasters, they don't have series that are led by females. They don't have quality contents, female screenwriters, and this is something that we should talk about. It's not only platforms. We don't have BBC here, unfortunately. Yes, I think there's a microphone that we can use. Yes, my question. How did you get here? How did you reach your status, and how have you maintained yourself?
How did I arrive at this stage of my career? Okay. All of us.
No, please.
¿Quién
no,
empieza?
please, because I'm from another country. Maybe she's more interested in.
Please, Paola,
I think
start.
you are more interested. Well, basically, I started dealing with cinema because I was desperate. I have a degree in law. I come from a city which is Milan, where cinema basically doesn't exist. So if you want to, back then, when I wanted to do something artistic, I was watched like a skunk. So then I moved to Rome, and I started to do a job in which I didn't excel, which was like dreadful and one of the most boring things I've ever done in my life. Which is public relation. I started working in public relation, and my job was writing. I was writing content. Check. A bunch of engineers would, I don't know, produce a new form of stuff for technology, and they would give this report to me, and I would I didn't understand a word, but I had to translate this in something really charming and captivating and send it to the press. That was my job. I think really one of the most boring jobs of my life, including making copies, really terrible. So basically I was so depressed. They didn't pay me at all, and I was really depressed. So a guy came into the office one day, and he was a friend of of my boss's, and he said, I wrote a short film. And I said, okay, I'll direct it. I was desperate. So who cares? I did it, and it was mind-blowing because I finally understand. I felt all my life. Do you understand me when I say, when you have to go to the grocery and you find yourself you open the door and you're at the pharmacy and you say, what the hell am I doing here? That was my life before. Then finally I got the right door, So it was a disaster because I was too old to start. I was 32. And disaster. All the school didn't get me, the major school. I didn't have money, so I couldn't go to the fancy, international school. So I found out a course of a crazy guy, but brilliant. He was member of a very important Italian movie group, which was La Nouvelle Vague of the cinema, Bertolucci. Okay, people like that. He was the editor of Bertolucci. So I did this course, and then I tried to figure out a way of having something produced. A guy from which I was working, a client of mine, I was writing stuff. He knew that I was able to write because I was writing stuff for him as a job. He said to me, I watched your short film, which I hated, by the way. I shot you, and I liked it. And I said, really? Yeah. And we want to make a short film to promote a camera, a new camera that we want to rent. Do you have anything for Valerio Mastandrea? I don't know if you know this guy, but Valerio Mastandrea is, and was even back then, one of the most famous Italian actors. So I was shocked. And I said yes, because at the moment I had figured out that I wanted to do cinema, I wrote 1,000 things. I wrote like crazy. I don't know, I still have, I think, 20 short films written. But so we sent this, story to Valerio. They sent it to Valerio. And this guy really is one of the top 10 Italian actors now, and it was back then. He called me 3 weeks later saying, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was like, ah! And I was like, cool, yeah? Then I clicked and I was, ah! So after that, with the money that I got from the prizes that I won with the short film, I will produce and write other short films, starting to cooperate with young scriptwriters coming out from the schools. And then after 3 years, I won a prize of the ministry for the developing of a script for my first feature film. Then the film went to Venice Film Festival, and it was quite well received, so I was quite happy about it. And that's it. And then, that's it. And then it was really difficult all the way, because my second movie is a sci-fi movie. Nobody produces a sci-fi movie. And it's set in the US, but I actually shot it here. I shot it in Spain, in Almeria.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I shot partially in the US and partially here. So then Netflix came. I shot 2 series. All these things I wrote and directed. I am also a scriptwriter for other directors, and I love to do that, by the way, but whatever. And then I did another couple of movies. So that's it.
Olatz.
Pues
How much time do you have? No, just kidding. I didn't have a calling since I was a girl. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I studied philosophy, which was quite a boring, difficult thing to study. And I knew I needed something easier, something...
Pero mis compañeros...
No, thank you. But maybe some of my classmates, yes. I was funny when I used to write at school, my papers, my essays. So I thought about it. Well, maybe I can be a screenwriter. I don't know. People are writing funny things. I think I'm good at that. And so I studied a course for screenwriting. Not as boring as my essays when I studied philosophy, but for screenwriting you have to write a lot. You're not good since you start. You have to work and work hard for a long time. When you are starting, you have a long journey ahead. And for me it was like Paola. I studied 1 year and I said, that's it, I'm ready, you can hire me. But no one does it, no one hires you. You need to keep working for a long time. So I worked in an investment bank, many different jobs until I stopped. I decided, okay, I'll stop here and I'm gonna try to find a job in this thing that I really like. So I kept on writing while I had all those other jobs. I kept working on these. It's a craftsmanship actually, and you have to keep working on it. I got my boss to fire me. I got fired, which is what I wanted. I dedicated 1 year in my life to get hired as a screenwriter. It's very difficult to get there, but then I studied that course. I met an actress who was in Aida, a popular TV series. And I think now it's even more difficult for people to access to because the teams are very reduced. We don't have such big teams for screenwriting. So, but I'm sure there's another way to get into the profession. I mean, there's always a way in. But so I met this actress and she showed them my proposal and they hired me. And they started paying me well, less than my male colleagues, but they started paying me well. And then once you get in, no one can stop you, right? You keep working, you start writing other series, and in the case of TV you have to adapt to the different series that you may be offered. What you need to do is you need to be able to write about all kinds of series, all kinds of stories. You need to adapt to the tone in each story, to the different narratives. And then I arrived in another series, Allá Abajo, which is a series where I worked with Marta Sanchez, my colleague, and a lot of people. We had a big audience. It was very well received. So we decided to create our own TV series that was one step farther ahead. And then that was at the same time when all the platforms arrived and women were starting to write more comedy. So it was like all the planets were aligned, and we got to we finally were where we wanted. And Alicia? Well, I don't know, here you can see I was a little girl who didn't get her plan A, so I had to move to my plan B, and I ended up studying Spanish philology, and nobody wanted me to be a journalist in my family, so they told me, well, just work for a newspaper, but study in philology instead of journalism. So, well, I studied philology, that's what I did, and I started working in newspapers. I used to go to Poland in the summers. I was very active all the time, and I think that, as they are saying, what you need to do is write, and keep writing all the time, but you need to write well. I'm a teacher, and I read screenplays all the time, and when I take a novel, I feel like if I was in a spa, because screenplays are usually written poorly, and it doesn't have to be like that. Screenplays are also literature. They have to be well written, they have to be very precise, very accurate, because our language is something wonderful, and we need to practice and write. And when I was coming back from Poland, I had this plan B that I mentioned, but I said, no, I don't want to do that. This is what I want to do. So I started working in the Spanish Filmotheque, and I didn't have time to write all the movie summaries that I had to write, so I used to talk my friends into coming to watch Russian movies. And then they were upset, they were mad at me, because they told me, hey, the summary you wrote was very good, but the movie was really boring. Well, I was good at writing those summaries. Then González Macho hired me, and I was working in press for him, and I kept on writing those sheets for the movies, and I was part of the team, but I was writing. I had a son, but I kept on writing, and I always kept on writing, and I got an award by the Ministry of Culture for a screenplay that I wrote, and I gave it to my boss, and he said, no, I'm not going to read it because I want to keep being happy. But then I gave it to Elias Querejeta, and he told me, I didn't know that you wrote so well, and it really offended me. When I heard that, I was like, what's the image that I project? They think I'm silly. They think I'm just a cute girl, that I'm funny, but that I don't write well. And I realized that I was living my plan B, because my plan A was being a writer, and I liked the film industry, and I liked screenwriting. So, well, since I had an award of the Ministry of Culture, I started studying about screenwriting. I wanted screenwriters to welcome me, and but it ended up being a book that was published. And I think us screenwriters, we need to be very proactive. We cannot be depressed. We get bad news, but we need to use that to as an impulse to keep going. And our best ideas are not the first ones we get. Usually that's the opposite. Usually the good idea is the opposite of what you just first thought, because that's when you surprise yourself, and that's when you can start developing the story. And this is also a work that you have to do with a team, and that's something I like. Now, maybe with my age, I like working on my own as well, but I've always been very happy working with the whole team, with filmmakers, because it's fascinating having that writer's room, which is a very balanced world. We share jokes, we tell each other's jokes. It's something you can really enjoy. So my piece of advice would be write, and learn how to write good summary reviews, movie summaries. I did start with a clear calling. Actually, I enrolled in the university in audiovisual communication, and I was also a time when Amenábar was studying, and we were both studying, but we decided to get out of college and just try to find our career. That ECAM in Madrid, I got the internship in ECAM, in the Madrid Film School, for studying in Cuba, and that was amazing, because that's where I felt really that welcome that I was looking for. And I was very lucky, very, very lucky, because my last project in the school, which was a screenplay for a feature film, one of the teachers sent it to Pedro Costa, a producer, one of old-time producers, and Pedro Costa had produced all the movies by Vicente Aranda. And as you can understand, it's the opposite to feminist productions, but my screenplay ended up there. And Vicente was going to shoot Juana la Loca, was going to film Juana la Loca, Locura de Amor, which was a historical TV series, and they told me that they wanted me next to Vicente for the screenplay. And for me, that was my first big shot, my first big opportunity. So I started reading everything about Juana la Loca, and I reached a conclusion. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't crazy at all. And so I went there and I presented this thesis for Vicente, and this is what Vicente answered. He told me, well, you can tell me anything you want, but I'm going to tell a story of a crazy woman, and I want her mates to be painting her breasts with hen. So this was my first big opportunity. I was like 20-something years old, and I said, well, I'm not going to be the screenwriter to share this story, because that's not me. And I went home. I was destroyed, and they told me, you're never gonna work again. I haven't started, and I'm not gonna work again. I finished already my career. But the result was a paradox, because actually Pedro kept on calling me for other projects, and I started working also for TV projects. I started working in daily formats, daily series, and maybe I've written 3,000 episodes. I don't know. After writing these, you can write just anything after working in such complex projects, and that's when actually I got the chance, the opportunity. I saw that historical series was actually my thing. So in the end, this Juana la Loca was the beginning and the end of my career in a way, and it's ended up being a funny anecdote. But I really, at some point, I thought that was going to be the end. I was never going to do that again. My first experience was the end of my career. But yes, so you have to follow your instincts. You have to listen to your instincts. And Alicia says this in class, and we see it often. When we have people who are really honest about the stories they are telling, when narratives are right and well written, but when you react in an honest way, that is very powerful, extremely powerful. And those are the good summaries. That's what stays in your mind. That's what you remember about a student, for example. That's very important. I don't know if you have a microphone somewhere there for the questions. Over there. Well, first, it's been very inspiring, so thank you to all of you. First of all, you were talking about the lack of anti-heroes, female anti-heroes. And I was thinking about Tres Anuncios en las Afueras, that movie with the big female anti-hero in American movies. But my question is, I work in podcasting, and there's always a younger brother, if we may call it that way, for TV series, but also for fiction writing. And I was thinking, when I was listening to you talking about the figures, the data, about the balance between men and women working in screenwriting, I was wondering, what about fiction writing and sound fiction? Because in podcasting and sound fiction, there are many women actually, but more and more we see that there are less and less women. And when I focus on the last sound fiction projects that I've seen in the last few years, I can't think of any women except for a single woman who is always very present. But there are very few women in this sector. So we start thinking about, silent movies where we had a lot of female directors and filmmakers, and but then when money was being made, we started losing all those women and having more men. So I would like to know your opinion about sound fiction, which is kind of like the younger brother of screenwriting. Have you ever thought about doing that as well, working in that sector as well?
I mean, please.
No, you go.
I'd love to do it. I think it's so interesting. It's kind of the opposite of what we do, because basically we work with image. So we write because actually the good script writing, I think, it's a piece of art itself. Well, Quentin Tarantino used to say that when he writes a script, when he ends his job, if he did it well, if he is satisfied, he doesn't even feel the urge of shooting it, which is fantastic. But on the other hand, what you do is quite the opposite, but it involves an element which is crucial for good script writing and good directing, which is the sound. I think that sound and rhythm, especially for I'm like a nerd, really. So I love special effects, and I shot a sci-fi movie. The 50% of the special effect is made by sound. So I think that writing for something like that and directing something like that would be totally fascinating. But I think it's a kind of it's an interesting, challenge. I think. I don't know what my colleagues think. I hear.
Yo no me lo he planteado, pero me parece otra forma.
I haven't considered it, but it's actually a different way of telling a story, right? And that's what we do. We tell stories. It's done with different elements in this case, but it's another way of telling stories. No, I was thinking, what would I do if someone called me and asked me to write something like that? Probably the little voice inside me would say, what are you doing? How are you going to say yes? But I would say yes. Then I would be terrified, and I would be researching and working, and I would call so many people to tell me to help me about how to do it. But I would say yes. But it's what she was saying, and in movies our base is the image, right? First I need to think about the actors, they need the dialogue, and it's going to complement their actions. But now in sound fiction it would be different. It would be the opposite. I would need to use the sound. In this last decade we are using sound in the movies very differently. And I think I would learn a lot. It sounds like a challenge, but I cannot say much more because I haven't created sound fiction, and I don't listen to it either, to be honest. But I think it could be interesting to write stories where you have to tell about lives and stories only with the sound. So congratulations to you for doing that, because it's interesting. We have time for one last question. Oh, but Virginia hasn't answered. Virginia, yes, sorry, since you're there, locked in that screen, I forgot about you. I wouldn't be able to do that. I think I would need to readapt to that, because I'm so used to working. It's like what Alicia was saying, we are so used to working with images that I would really need to work a lot. It would be the opposite. There you don't have interior daylight, right? Like those indications we have on scripts. Well, you could have a little bird or an owl sound for telling that it's nighttime or daytime. Well, different codes. Yes, I would like to ask, since you're saying that everything changed with the arrival of the platforms, how you see nowadays for young artists, females in this case, because we are talking about women here, how can we access the industry? Well, I think it's very difficult, and I'm really sorry to say that, but because for me, I could train a lot writing and in smaller projects, but now, like from the very beginning, you need to be a creator. You need to create a series and sell your own series, and I think it's very unfair because you don't have the confidence and the experience to do that. I was able to do that when I had already worked writing for many series. And you finally feel that you're strong enough to lead a project like that and to be able to do it on your own, but you need to practice a lot. You need to practice a lot to be able to write a whole season, for example. So what you can do is maybe, I don't know, some kind of association with platforms, maybe where you can work, platforms offer you to work with more experienced screenwriters, maybe. I don't know, I would suggest that you join teams with more experienced writers, so you can earn that confidence to really get the confidence you need. We are like tennis players. You need to play many games, and well, sometimes they're gonna call you because sometimes people don't like your scripts, and you need to keep writing. You cannot just leave everything and abandon, and you need to keep working. You cannot give up. You need to keep working and practicing to be able to train and get a better technique. So it's a long career. You need time. And now they are asking you to be a creator, to sell a series for a platform. I think that's very tough. I think you need to find the way to access. When I started, it was also very difficult. There were no platforms. We only had broadcasters, TV channels, and I was thinking, well, how am I gonna become a screenwriter? Well, a screenplay is something we don't even consider, but I thought, well, we have to give value to that. I'm gonna write a story and I'm going to convince someone. I'm going to talk that person into producing and shooting that film. That way, well, we're gonna be something. We're gonna be a team. And I like listening to you, Olatz, because I think you're right. I've been telling my students for many years. I've always told them it's easier now because there is more work. But it's true. How can you join these teams? We are actually teachers. We are asking screenwriters to accept trainees or students in their teams. But I think there's another way. You can be consultants and write reports. This is terrible. Because I'm sure you've seen this too. I've seen my students writing reports about a screenplay that I've actually just submitted, which is kind of funny, right? My students are becoming, some of my students may become my boss, for example, in a specific project. But it's a way to access the platform. Maybe then you need to gain the trust of the platform leaders. I mean, there are always doors that you can use to access the sector. Or you can also work, have another job, right? You can work in something else while you keep writing, because that gives you also experience. Because when I was working as a secretary in the bank, it helped me write a screenplay about that story afterwards. So it's a way you need to keep writing, and improving your technique as a writer, because it's what we need to do. That's what we do as screenwriters. You want to tell this story. Well, I'm going to help you tell that story with a good technique, which is what I got throughout the years. So it's good. It's good. All kinds of experience and jobs give you the experience you need.
Somebody who actually changed totally my way of writing, and from that moment on I started like winning prizes, so I think it's a good tip. This guy is a guy which works with Matteo Garrone. I don't know if you heard about. And he's a fabulous scriptwriter. Basically, he taught me that it's about characters. Everything is about character. Even action is about characters. That was the most precious piece of advice that I ever had. And when you do reach a three-dimensional character, the character lives on its own. So basically, if you want to force your character in a direction for the plot that you think it's really what he should do, he wouldn't go there. So, and you cannot force a character if it's kind of well conceived. So it's kind of magical. To do so, you have to write. But even on your own, don't worry. You just have to write. Don't be afraid of anything or anybody. If you cannot find a way to get in, it means that probably there's another way. So you just keep on looking. For example, there are prizes in my country, in Italy, specifically for scriptwriters, and Solinas, for example, and they organize meetings with broadcasters and producers, and I'm sure that there's something similar here as well. And those are so useful, because if you kind of become finalists in those prizes, the scouts are starting to notice you, etc. Plus, cooperate with young directors, like people who are studying and making short films, because a lot of times directors and scriptwriters are not like a couple for life, but they go on a long way. And so if the short film of your director goes well, you go well as well, and you start entering festivals and meeting people and meeting other directors. So what I would suggest is to make connections with people working in your field, with the directors. Don't be afraid or scared of everything, of anything. You'll figure it out. I mean, everybody did, like we did. We figured it out. Like, okay, there was a long period, at least for me, in which I would eat mainly rice. But if you're determined enough, you will go there, you will succeed. Don't worry. Now it's better, so it's...
Gracias, Paola. Virginia, si tienes algo que decir, cierras la mesa porque...
Virginia, if there's anything you would like to add, because we're gonna finish this roundtable. No, I just wanted to say that the platforms really multiply the opportunities, but it's quite tricky. I mean, you need to know that at the beginning you cannot access just selling a project to a platform. It's obviously it's more difficult with a feature film, for example, because you need to do it with directors, filmmakers. It's more difficult unless you have that contact. It's more difficult for you to do it. But there are still teams. There are still writers' rooms, and it's like what Olatz was saying. You have to keep working and do other kinds of work, but that's part of your training, that's part of your learning process to end up. For us, we needed to do all that before to be able to end up telling stories as well as we do now. So my piece of advice would be, even if you join the last smallest team for a TV show that you hate actually, and that's not something that you would do, well, just tell that story like if it was your own feature film, like if it was your own story, because you can't really tell the difference if someone doesn't believe in what he's doing. So when someone joins a team and they are just doing it without willing to do it and without enthusiasm, well, you can see that. You can see that in the writing. So just do it as a part of the process. It will give you access to something else, and that's how you're going to open your way. That's very important. Well, you need to think about it as part of your learning process. I need to learn, and this is part of my training, and it's very beautiful. I will always recognize all the episodes that I've written. Yes, but that's a different story. Well, thank you very much to the four of you. Thank you to all of you for being here. I think it was very interesting, very inspiring, and thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you.